The way that young woman is side-eyeing the microphone and biting her finger in the image conveys that she is nervous about speaking in public. Welcome. My name is Dr. Jason Stone. This is a short narrated PowerPoint about glossophobia or public speaking apprehension for my Speech 1113 class. The National Institute of Mental Health has looked at public speaking apprehension or communication anxiety, and it has been the top fear of Americans for the past 10 years. And between 74 and 85% of Americans have reported some form of glossophobia. Additionally, according to information presented by the Psych Times in 2022, dizziness, heart palpitations, sweating, chest pain, blushing, shaking, panic attacks, vomiting, shortness of breath, sweaty palms, fear, and stomach butterflies are all physical symptoms of glossophobia or public speaking apprehension. So 3/4 of us experience it. What can we do about it? And are there any ways that we can diminish it? So in this short narrated PowerPoint, we're going to talk a little bit about your human anatomy and how that relates to communication apprehension. We're going to look at communication apprehension from a big picture sort of perspective, that 30,000 foot, kind of flyover. And then we're going to look at some things that you can do when you're on the runway to prevent communication apprehension. In other words, you are speaking or you're about to speak or it's the night before, things that you can do right before takeoff. We're going to talk a little bit about your self-talk. We'll discuss some breathing techniques and some breathing strategies. We'll talk about some cognitive restructuring and some different emotions that you will be experiencing, and how you might choose to foreground some things and background a few others. Let's go. We are storytelling animals. There are all kinds of animals out there, but we are the only ones that tell stories that we know of. We are social animals. We use language to cooperate with each other. When we cooperate with one another, we thrive. We tend to gather together in small units that help us be more efficient and help us divide labor, but still give us autonomy. The separated sort of condition that is the natural sort of state, the modern nuclear family, that's a relatively modern construction. It's not the way that we've been socialized for the last 100,000 years or so. So all of that contributes potentially to communication apprehension. When we were hunter and gatherers, if you said something really great that helped us kill a woolly mammoth or distinguish which berry was poisonous, that was great, and the tribe rewarded that. If you said something that was really dumb or that flew against the social conventions or that demonstrated somehow that you were outside of the bounds of what was acceptable for the group, you could be ostracized. Ostracized means kicked out of the cave, and ostracized means you don't roll with us anymore, and you're not going to have our protection, and you're going to be all by yourself. Your chances of survival if you got ostracized from your group went down to almost zero. If you were injured, no one would help you and care for you. If you ran across another group of humans, they were much more likely to take you as a slave than they were to give you kindness and hospitality. So I think all of those things contributed to us having this hardwired sort of neuroanatomy for communication apprehension. We needed to know that we were saying something good, essentially that wasn't going to get us ostracized or kicked out of the cave. And that's a very primal sort of fear, I think, that's been hardwired into us for hundreds of thousands of years. On this slide, we see a cross-section of a human brain and the chemical signature for adrenaline. Emotions get activated in the amygdala, which is this really small walnut-sized area right here in the center of the brain. Our emotions are activated and are fired, essentially. They're in the amygdala, and ultimately they get processed. In particular, a lot of negative emotions gets processed there within the amygdala, such as fear. And those are primal, kind of older parts of the brain. A lot of anatomists and neuroscientists hypothesize that the brain developed in 3 different stages. The first of which is this medulla right here, and the medulla is essentially, just the part that's connected to the heart and connected to the lungs and liver and other, sort of automated, kind of systems within our brain. We also have this cerebellum, back here, in the back, and that is predominantly a visual, sort of cortex. And then up here to the front, we have this newer, kind of area, and that is the executive function, sort of area of the brain, and that's where a lot of our higher decision making happens. You see that the eyes are really connected to this. We'll get into that when we talk about visual aids and talk about how the optic nerve runs back here to this visual cortex quite a bit when we talk about visual aids. For now, what you need to understand is that adrenaline gets produced. It gets produced in your pituitary glands, which sit on top of your kidneys. You get cortisol, you get adrenaline. Those things course throughout your system. They are neuroanatomical markers. Your emotions and the neuroanatomy behind your emotions are really interesting to me. We experience emotions, but for the most part, they are fleeting. They are short. They happen for like 30 to 60 seconds, and then they're over. And if you allow an emotion to pass, it will, and you will experience something different. Knowing that you get to choose what you're going to feel, and that even if you do have a rush of negative emotions, that is a temporary emotional state, is a remarkably empowering thing for all public speakers. So let's look at some of the keys to unlocking superhuman public speaking confidence. Choose what you feel. Realize that emotions are fleeting. What you say can prompt action, and action changes history. So what you say can potentially be pretty important. Prepare until you become the argument. And then finally, remember to manage yourself. If you do these 5 things, you should be confident in most public speaking situations. This recommendation seems pretty self-evident, and that is that you should get public speaking experience. Practice as much as possible. Speak out in class, speak out in small groups, speak up at work. Make an effort to make arguments and to reason through small speeches. That will have the effect of offsetting some of the nervousness that you will feel and developing confidence in this act of speaking in public. Again, this seems pretty, obvious. If you know that you're speaking in advance, prepare until you can become the argument. The example here is of a really sharp axe. If you had a long time to cut down a big tree, how would you spend your time? Well, somebody who really knows what they're doing would spend a lot of time sharpening the axe, making sure that the axe was really good, and spend less time actually chopping down the tree. And your preparation in a public speech should be the same way. Think positively about the public speaking experience. If you are not excited about it, nobody is going to be. If you are clouding your judgment with a whole lot of negative self-talk and programming yourself with a whole lot of negative programming, then that's going to reflect itself in your public speaking performance. This young woman is looking in a mirror, and that's a great way to practice your future success in your public speaking class. Good public speakers frequently visualize themselves in the actual speaking situation being successful the night before. There's a lot of psychological research that talks about mental preparation through rehearsal and visualization as being critical in decreasing any type of anxiety-inducing task, whether that's running a marathon or taking a test or giving a speech in public. Visualization of success the night before or immediately before the presentation is usually a pretty good way to decrease communication apprehension. Next is remember that it's only on the inside. You may feel like you are a ball of nerves inside. We, as audience members, don't know how nervous you are until you tell us. And you can tell us either by verbalizing that or by doing something that communicates that you're having a great deal of anxiety. But until you actually do something and communicate that anxiety to us, it's only on the inside. So refrain from verbalizing it most of the time. And if you can project confidence, then that's how the audience will perceive you. Another great recommendation for public speakers is to understand that it's not going to be perfect. There have been a ton of speeches throughout the history of humanity, and very few of them have been perfect. In fact, there's a picture of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who gave the I Have a Dream speech in Washington. As part of this class, you analyzed that speech. There were a couple of times when Dr. King had some non-fluencies. He had a couple of slips of the tongue. He didn't really correct those or draw attention to them, but I think that it's notable that the speech that's largely considered by most scholars and by most of the American populace to be the most perfect speech of all time wasn't actually perfect. It was really good, but it wasn't actually perfect. Your speech won't be perfect either. The last of our big picture communication apprehension recommendations is just to be yourself. Don't try to be some other public speaker that you've seen. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. Just be you. Speak about things that you know about. Speak about things that you're passionate about. Be yourself. If you just show up and kind of be yourself and let us see who you are, that is going to be a prescription for authenticity, and that is going to be a prescription for eloquence. It's going to be a good speech. Now that we've concluded our recommendations for 30,000 foot communication apprehension reduction, things that you can do in advance of the public speaking situation, let's talk about things that you can do maybe the night before, a couple of days before, or maybe immediately before you are to speak. And number one is sleep. Sleep is so important. Sleep is going to be critical to you being energetic the next day. They say that, of course, you need 6 to 8 hours of good, restful, restorative sleep every night. And closer to 8 is better. If you have a sleepless night, you need 2 nights of regular sleep to get yourself out of that sleep debt. Most undergraduates are chronically under-rested, and you have not been getting enough sleep. Very important to make sure that you are adequately and properly rested the night before your presentation. The next recommendation here for physical things that you can do to decrease your communication apprehension is to flex. You have lots of big muscles, the muscles in your back and your posterior chain, the muscles in your rear end, your gluteus maximus, your quadriceps. These are big muscles. They use a lot of sugar when you flex them, and you have a lot of glycogen in your system. If you are sitting there and you have a lot of nervous energy and you're bouncing your foot, a lot, you might find that it's more helpful to you to really get some of your big muscles going and really flex your pectorals and your lats and your quadriceps. And that will release endorphins. That's going to help you manage some of your anxiety. It's going to burn up some of those neurotransmitters that are causing you stress. The next recommendation for things that you can do the day of or immediately before is to breathe. And in an upcoming slide, we will get into Dr. Andrew Wheel's recommended methods for breathing to decrease communication apprehension. And these track athletes are quick out of the blocks, and they have gotten off to a great start. It is very important for you as a public speaker to get off to a great start. If you successfully get the audience's attention, establish your credibility, introduce your topic, and get over there to that first main point, if you can start talking about the main point and staying on script, then I really feel like it's almost halfway done, to having a really successful presentation. You just have to finish up maybe a couple of main points, integrate a couple of slides, pull in a couple of sources, and essentially you're finished. To me, it all starts with that great attention getter, with being credible as far as the audience is concerned. And if you can do those two things, you're well on your way to having a great speech. The next recommendation is to look the audience in the eye. Doing so helps to establish rapport with the audience. Anywhere between 1.5 and 3 seconds per audience member is usually considered appropriate. If looking another in the eye is too off-putting during your speaking, you can look in their third eye, which is this area that would be right here, just kind of outside of the slide, between the person's eyes and in their forehead. And that gives the illusion of generating eye contact without the off-putting, anxiety-inducing actual eye contact. The next recommendation is to lose yourself, and just lose yourself in the public speaking situation. And this image is of a person who's in a national collegiate public speaking competition, and he is pantomiming out hailing a cab when he's had some difficulty calling out a cab, and he is pantomiming that action. Of course, he is, really, really putting on a show of it, and he is losing himself in the expression of his frustration in attempting to hail a cab. This last recommendation here is that you should use visual aids. And the image that I chose here is of a young woman who is at a Mardi Gras parade. And she is obviously very attention provocative. If you are really, really nervous in a public speaking situation, if you have the ability to click on visual aids or to direct attention to visual aids, always remember that when your audience is looking at your visual aids, they're not looking at you. So if you are concerned about how you look, or concerned about your appearance, or concerned about your eloquence, or concerned that the audience is looking at you a little more closely than you would like for them to, having a good visual aid really puts the attention on the visual aid and takes the attention off of you as the speaker. This next slide reviews 4 big picture recommendations by the U.S. Navy SEALs. And these are recommendations that they give to their candidates to help them with this task that they're engaged in right here. And they are supposed to spend 10 minutes underwater without coming up for a breath. They can take breaths from other people. They can take breaths off of the other people's aqualungs, but they're not allowed to come up. To do that, to accomplish that, they engage in goal setting, mental rehearsal, self-talk, and arousal control. Let's briefly discuss all of these. Goal setting might just be another 10 seconds. Hey, I'm going to participate in the drill another 10 seconds, and if I can't score some air in the next 10 seconds, I'm going to tap out and stop. Mental rehearsal, they go over it in their head before they have an actual chance to participate in the drill. Self-talk, they monitor how they're talking to themselves and what type of language they're using with themselves, and make sure that they're programming themselves for success by using positive self-talk. And then finally, arousal control. When someone comes up to you and hits you in the stomach and tries to knock all the wind out of you and takes the mask off of your face and you're 10 feet underwater, that's going to cause an adrenaline response. Part of the Navy SEALs training is that they engage in arousal control. I saw all 4 of these talked about in a documentary, and I thought that the overlap between the mental coaching that the Navy SEALs were engaged in and the mental coaching that I use with my public speaking students was overwhelmingly coherent. And I just saw a plethora of overlap in what we try to do in a public speaking class and what the Navy instructors are trying to do with this drill. These last few slides have to do with your self-talk as a public speaker. The self-talk on the left is positive, and it's reassuring, and it helps you engage in arousal control. The self-talk on the right is not going to help you engage in arousal control, and in fact, the negativity of the self-talk on the right causes more anxiety and causes a feedback loop of anxiety. It creates more anxiety. Reminds me of the old Seneca quote, if you're a Stoic, we suffer more in our heads. I could probably talk about this slide for 5 minutes. I'm going to keep it nice and short. Take a picture of this, take a screenshot of this, come back to this, engage in this process. If you will just pause this video and do 3 rounds of this, you will get a crazy dopamine hit that will noticeably alter your mood. So if you think that breathing is BS, I challenge you to engage in it. Do 3 rounds of it and then tell me it's BS. These last 2 slides get to deal with the fact that you can choose what you feel. We've done a lot of research into the neurochemical and anatomical response of anxiety in the last several years, and in running some of those blood samples and those hormonal assays through mass spectrometers, they have discovered that there's really very little difference between anxiety and excitement. So maybe there's a little bit more adrenaline and neuroepinephrine in anxiety, but for the most part, most of us are not complicated enough that we can parse that out. We don't have enough emotional analysis. We're not capable of parsing out the difference between anxiety and excitement. To us, it feels the same. It feels the same, so it's ultimately a story that you're telling yourself. A story that says that you're anxious, a story that says that you're excited. You get to choose which one. And here are a couple of articles about being excited and about foregrounding excitement as opposed to foregrounding anxiety, and how that has performative effects in a number of different fields, including test taking, chess playing, and public speaking. And you can choose to be nervous, or you can choose to be excited. Speakers and performers who choose to be excited frequently report better results. This concludes our lecture, our narrated mini lecture about glossophobia or communication apprehension in Dr. Stone's Speech 1113 class.